So the AFC and NFC Championships are upon us. The teams are decided, and we're here to discuss that. First, we'll go to the AFC. The Baltimore Ravens will be hosting the Kansas City Chiefs. Baltimore just kind of demolished Houston, and the Chiefs just beat the Bills. It seems like that's an ongoing thing. That's kind of a little bit of a quarterback rivalry that's been brewing, but the Chiefs kind of have the majority of the wins there. But this is shaping up to be a really good game. I think if you look at the playoff picture, these were kind of the teams that you expected to be here. The one seed Ravens and then the Chiefs. Mahomes, they just won the Super Bowl. They've won a couple now with Mahomes and Kelsey and Andy Reid and company. Uh, this one, this one's a tough game to decide here. It definitely helps that the Ravens that they are in Baltimore. I do think the home advantage is huge in a playoff game, and especially a championship game. And this year, for whatever reason, at least for me, I kind of feel like this is just one of those years where the Ravens, I don't like it because I'm a Steelers fan, but it just feels like one of those years where something bad's about to happen for me. So I feel like the Ravens are going to end up winning this game. But to go into it a little bit more, Lamar Jackson's very hot right now. He's a very difficult quarterback to defend just because his style of play. And the Chiefs, they're not necessarily, even though they just won a Super Bowl, they're still kind of having the same issues that they did last year with the wide receiver room just isn't really there. They have a few guys, they have Rasheed Rice and a bunch of other speedy wide receivers. That's kind of their go-to for the Chiefs. And obviously Kelsey is the absolute biggest target on the field. He's going to absolutely get a lot of touches in this game. And of course, rely on their run game too. But, the passing attack's definitely the go-to here. On the experience side, like I said, the Chiefs have won multiple Super Bowls now with Mahomes. So there's a little bit less pressure on them to perform than the Ravens. So maybe that's a factor in the game. And the Ravens have dealt with a lot of injuries over the last few years. So they've kind of had a tough sledding there. Even though they have been, one of the top teams year in year out, they just keep getting hit with the injury bug. But I think this is the year where they have enough healthy guys where they can really make a big push, and I think they're really well set up to win this game. I do think the Chiefs are going to give them a massive game because it's not an easy out by any means. It's just not. But I think the Ravens are going to do just enough to squeak by and win the game.
Yeah, I have the Ravens as well, squeaking it by too. Um, I have them as one of the two best teams in the league. Them and San Fran are my two top teams. They're in both of their championship games for the conferences, so rightfully so. Um, this is the Chiefs' sixth straight AFC Championship game appearance, so you can't knock them for what they have done since, excuse me, Andy Reid and company and Patrick Mahomes have been together. Making it to six straight is not easy. So they definitely have the edge when it comes to pressure because they are so accustomed to it and making so many in the past 6 years. I mean, six in a row. So, but I still think with the way the Ravens are structured and what they have in health wise, this is the best year that they have to make the Super Bowl. Um, and I think they get it done. Lamar is playing at an MVP level again. I'm a big Lamar guy. I think he's really good, one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And then on the other side, you got Pat Mahomes, who is another top quarterback in the league. So you can't discredit between the two quarterbacks what they've done in recent years with their teams. But I think as a whole, the Ravens squeeze it out very closely because this will be a very close game and good game as well. Um, but the Ravens squeeze it out because I feel like they have more and are a more complete team than the Chiefs are.
Yeah, I do think, some of the star players on the Chiefs do take up a big portion of the salary cap. So, that's for their wide receiver room, obviously. They don't have Tyreek Hill like they used to. They did attempt to, try and keep him around, but this it's just what happens when you have a major quarterback. I mean, Lamar's making his money too, but I feel like they have more of like a system in place that still lets them do what they want to do and run the ball big time. It's just the way that they set up that team to really, really be centered around Lamar. So I feel like they have more of a system than the Chiefs do. The Chiefs are just a little bit more reliant on the skill of Mahomes and Kelsey. So I do think that system is going to help them out a bit more. And yeah, like just what we've been saying, I think they just squeak by. I don't think either team is going to, blow out either team or be a big score. I don't really see that happening unless just something horrible happens, like a big time injury. But I think the Ravens do just enough to get to the Super Bowl. Anything else to add?
Yeah, the only way I was just gonna add, the only way it would be a blowout or a team wins by like double digits is like you said, either a big time injury on one of the sides of the teams or one team is just turning the ball over more than the other, and the other team's just capitalizing points for turnovers. Um, so it's gonna be a close game, very entertaining. Um, and yeah, Ravens will represent the AFC in both of our predictions in the
And
Super Bowl.
and moving to the NFC side, the San Francisco 49ers are hosting the Detroit Lions. This is an interesting situation. The 49ers have been a team that's just seemingly always in the NFC Championship. I guess, like, on the AFC side, like the Chiefs are. But the 49ers have been one of those teams that are just always in it, but they don't seem to actually win the thing. But I do think this is one of the better years they are set up to do that. Um, they have the loaded defense. They have really great weapons and Christian McCaffrey, which is a huge boost over what they've had over the last couple of years. They had the little Debo trickery going on there for a while. But having Christian McCaffrey is just massive. And then you have Debo and Ayuk and Kittle. I do think the weakest link, he's been getting a lot of MVP talks, which I don't think is justified in the slightest. That's just me. I feel like he's just not. When you have that great of a team surrounded by you, it's relatively easy. I'm not a Brock Purdy hater. I just think that's just the reality of the situation. I kind of feel like you compare it to Bama's dynasty. I think you compare him to someone like Jake Coker. You just have a team that's just so good around you. All you have to do is not mess up. You just have to distribute the ball and not make turnovers, and you're good. But, to that point, that's just how good the 49ers roster is. They're just stacked on all sides of the ball. And on the Lions side, they're finally in the playoffs. They finally won a playoff game. That is absolutely great for them. I'm personally rooting for them to win the whole thing because they deserve it probably more than any team in the NFL. They stuck it out this long. But, Jared Goff, he got traded away. He kind of got kicked to the curb. So the Los Angeles Rams go ahead and win a Super Bowl with Matthew Stafford, and they did. But Goff's managed to kind of turn his reputation around here. He's done very well for the Lions. They're a very high-scoring team. And now they have a 1-2 punch, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. That draft pick was also a little bit questionable. It was a high pick, and then the usage wasn't necessarily there this year. I would know. He was on my fantasy team. So that was kind of iffy. But, they have a really strong duo run game. They have some great wide receivers, mainly Amos St. Brown and a few other guys Goff's going to sling it to. I do think this is one of the few teams that could really, give the 49ers defense a push. But ultimately, if I had to make a decision, I think it's going to come down to the 49ers winning, especially at home. I just think they're just so incredibly stacked across the board, minus the quarterback. But, he does just enough. And in this last game, against the Packers, he was struggling, but ultimately did take them to a game winning type of drive. So if he just does just enough, I think the 49ers get across the finish line and reach the Super Bowl. So my matchup would be the Ravens against the 49ers.
Alrighty, so I'm going to take a different approach to this game than what you did. So these are two very good teams in the NFC. The Detroit Lions finally back in the playoffs, won playoff games. They hosted them too. If you watch their playoff games at home, the atmosphere is great. It's great for the city, great for the NFL to see a Lions team finally be successful after, gutting it out for however many years it's been, that they have not been very good. And I think that had to do large in part because of Dan Campbell. I think when they hired Dan Campbell, it was, people at first were like, well, I don't know if this is going to work because his character's different. I mean, his like very first interviews, he's saying, we're going to bite your kneecaps, giving off that type of vibe, kind of be funny. But as it went on, and you see him coach more games and stuff, you realize that he is actually a very good coach. I think he's a very good coach and a great fit in that Detroit Lions locker room. The locker room loves him. That's a key big thing in the NFL. If you win your locker, well, that's just in any sports. If you win your locker room, you're going to be very successful. And they trusted him. The front office trusted him. So that's where we are with the Detroit Lions. They traded away for Garrett Goff. They traded away Matthew Stafford to the Rams. Ultimately, the Rams did go on to win a Super Bowl with Stafford. But then the Lions got the revenge in the first playoff game this year by beating the Rams in Detroit. Kind of ruined the Stafford homecoming. But we know what Stafford did at Detroit, so there's nothing against him when he was at Detroit. But I think Jared Goff being there, he is turning his career around. His resume is getting better. And kind of like what you said with the 49ers, Jared Goff is the weakest link for this Detroit Lions team because we have seen in the past where Jared Goff has a great game and doesn't turn the ball over, but then the next game he turns the ball over. So, but I think that also what also helps them too is like you said, the 1-2 punch with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. I think once they finally figured out how to use Jahmyr Gibbs and like even it out between the two, I think the Montgomery injury helped Jahmyr Gibbs get his feet wet and comfortable in the system. And that's where it really took off with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery with that 1-2 punch. I think a big contributor for them this year is the rookie tight end and Sam Laporta. I can attest to that because I also had him in fantasy, and he's been great. When he got injured in their final game against the Vikings of the regular season, I was worried because there was a potential that he was going to be out for the playoffs. But he toughed it up, went out against the Rams and played well, and he's been doing well like he always does in his regular season. He's been doing well in the postseason and the playoffs. So this team is not a team to look past. Definitely can't look them over as like, well, they're going to the Niners. The Niners are going to beat them pretty easily. No, this team is going to come out. They're going to play hard. It's going to be tough. It's going to be physical. So this team definitely someone to not look out for. Well, to not look over as someone, to take lightly. That's what I'm trying to say. On the Niners side, I kind of said with the Ravens, them and Baltimore are the top two teams in the league. They're both in their conference championships, rightfully so. Um, the only downside with them is injuries are knocking them again. I think if they weren't so injured last year when they went into Philly, when they had to basically have Christian McCaffrey play quarterback because Brock Purdy was injured and the other quarterbacks were injured at the time, I think they would have won if they weren't injured. If Brock Purdy didn't get injured, I think they would have beaten Philly last year and went to the Super Bowl. This year, um, Deebo Samuel is questionable still. His status for the game is uncertain. He did not practice today. I just read he didn't practice today, and Kyle Shanahan said that his status is unknown for the game Sunday. So if they are without him, it's going to be troubling. We saw how stagnant their offense can be without Deebo Samuel. You had to have guys step up. Your third and fourth strings come in and step up in place for Deebo to get the production. Um, so if they were without him on Sunday, then it's gonna be tough. And so I'm actually gonna go with the upset. I'm pulling for the Lions, just like how everyone else in America is. Um, I think the Lions can get it done. I know it is at San Fran, but if San Fran is without Debo, I think they get it done. I think Detroit gets it done. Even with Debo and he's not 100%, I think Detroit gets it done because we've seen Brock Purdy, kind of be like Jared Goff, where he has really good games, but then he's kind of stagnant. We've seen him before without Debo Samuel be very stagnant. I know he has Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, but when you lose one of your top receivers, it's kind of tough. So, um, I'm gonna pull for Detroit. Um, like everyone else is, kind of tough as a Bears fan to say that because they are in our division. But I am gonna pull and root for the Detroit Lions to make the Super Bowl and play the Baltimore Ravens for my prediction.
Yeah, I think the Debo situation certainly impacts the game in a big way. Um, and like you said, it really kind of comes down to which QB can stay composed. Um, I think Goff is, ahead of Purdy. I do think Goff is the better quarterback personally. But, the way we saw Purdy play last game, it was kind of iffy. The 49ers really didn't look too great all game. And if they go a game without Debo too, it really starts to be on Purdy's shoulders. And in this setting in the NFC Championship game, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him to perform. And I do think the Lions have a little bit more, they have more of an attitude to them because of Dan Campbell. They have a toughness to them where they want to, go into San Francisco and win. They just have a certain edge to them. They're really fiery, and I think they're all really behind their head coach. And another player I'd like to mention is Aiden Hutchinson, who's the hometown kid for Detroit. He's gonna be playing his heart out in this game because he wants to win it for Detroit and Detroit fans. Because he would know they've struggled pretty much his entire life to do anything worth mentioning. So I think he's going to be trying extra hard in this game. And I think the Lions are, they have a really good shot in this one. I don't want to discredit them just because I picked the Niners. I think they're a very, very good team. They're one of the teams that, the Niners can't completely just shut down one part of their offense and then they're just fine because they have Goff who can sling it and they have the really good run game. You can't just, they're not one-dimensional at all. And you also mentioned Laporta too. They have a lot of good targets to get to. And, even on a run play, still, which running back's going to get the ball, you don't know. So that really makes it hard for the 49ers defense. I do think no matter what happens, it's going to be a great game. But ultimately, it comes down to the quarterback play because both these quarterbacks, they've had their off days. They can also be hot, but more than anything, they're really just distributors of the ball. And I think that's just what it comes down to. I think Purdy has a little bit more to work with because that roster is so good. But if Debo's out, that certainly hurts his chances. But like I said, my pick is still going to be Ravens 49ers in the Super Bowl. I'd also like to mention that little it's a recurring trend now at this point that the Super Bowl logo has the colors of the teams that are going to be in it. So if that's still going on, it does have the Ravens 49ers colors if you want to go by that. I'm not going by that, but that's just a funny thing worth mentioning that could maybe help out my case just a teeny tiny bit.
Yeah, that's a conspiracy theory that, pretty much has been happening, and kind of people have been like upping it, especially for the past few years. Because, the colors, those teams going to be in it. There was also a leak, I don't know if you saw it, where a news station, um, whenever they first announced it was like doing the national anthem and those with the pregame stuff, it leaked them the performers for the Super Bowl with the Ravens versus 49ers. Um, but I'm going against it. If it is Ravens Niners, I'll be fine with it. I still think it's going to be a good game, regardless of who is in it. If it's Ravens Lions or Ravens Niners, I still think we're going to get a good Super Bowl. It's just I'm rooting for Detroit because it would be good for the sport. The fans will love it. Detroit will love it.
Yeah,
I
they
think
deserve it.
it would just be good. Yeah, and they deserve it. It would just be good for the sport. I've watched them very closely. Obviously as a Bears fan, being in my division, got to see what I'm going to deal with for the next however many years. With this crew that Detroit has. Um, and I just like them. Even with Jared Goff and his, ups and downs, I still like the team. I'm still going to pull for him, even if Debo plays for the Niners. I think if Debo plays, he won't be fully 100%, which is still not great because you want your great players to be 100% healthy to go out there and perform their best. That's anyone's favorite teams that have their favorite players. They want them to go out and be 100%. So even if, like I said, even if Debo is playing, I'm still going to pull for the Lions. Like I said, if the Niners beat the Lions and make the Super Bowl, I won't be upset about it because then we would have the two best teams in the league and Ravens Niners for the Super Bowl. But I'm going to pull for the underdog, go with the Lions. I think Dan Campbell has done very well for them. He's going to get them ready. He's going to ignite that fire in them to go out there and play physical because this is going to be a physical game. You know, it's going to be one win in the trenches. Who's going to win that battle in the trenches? So it's going to be interesting to see that. Um, but yeah, I'm still going to pull with the Lions. I agree with you said. It comes down to quarterback play. It also comes down to who wins the trenches. So it's going to be physical. Um, and see on the Lions side, as far as receiver wise, who steps up next? You know, if the Niners shut down Amon Ra or Laporta or both, who steps up in that receiving core to make the plays that are needed to win. So, but yeah, I still have the Lions and Ravens Lions for my Super Bowl.
All right, so then it is decided. We've at least agreed that the Ravens are going to be in the Super Bowl. There's a little bit of debate on who makes it from the NFC side, but obviously one of us has to be right there. And that was our talk about the championship games, and we'll see who actually does make the Super Bowl.